The book I would like to show you today is Your Opponent is Overrated, a Practical Guide to Inducing Errors by James Schuyler, that he wrote already another book, I think The Dark Knight System, which probably was a repertoire on E4 Knight C6. This book in reality is about no draws. He says in the beginning. Why no draws? Because the mentality of a draw is really bad, and it can be really seen in games like 25 and 26 of this book, played by Nakamura, which are very long, like 80 moves long, in which Nakamura destroys the opponent, but at the end. So he didn't accept a draw. And why this is important? Because if you say your opponent is overrated, well, Nakamura clearly wasn't overrated. But that shows that the mentality of a draw can really lead us to bad results, poor results in tournament. So this is what you need, to something that makes you think. Here I would like to show you game number 4 from this book, played by Schuyler in, I think, 1989. It says it's played in Washington, so I don't know if it's Washington DC or the state of Washington. Peter Yu was white, Schuyler was black. Peter Yu played C4. Now, he says, in the beginning he says, I suppose that whoever plays C4 want to play this, you know, and this is a kind of boring opening, a kind of boring way. So he says, you must clearly stop the opponent immediately. From whatever he wants to do, you have an idea. And so you cannot have an idea if you just try to memorize openings instead of thinking what the opponent wants to actually do. So Schuyler played b6, and he says, for the reason already given, I would recommend this move to anyone. I hope that by now the reader will not be surprised to hear that 1b6 is the most successful statistically of any defense to 1c4. While I am the forced to admit that statistics can be misleading, here they merely confirm what should already be clear. Don't give your opponent what he wants. Yeah, it makes sense. Knight c3, bishop b7, e4, e6. Here it says that Short and Morozevich have played e5, but he played e6 because he doesn't want this bishop to be totally blocked, which would be as with e5. And so once more you see that the author is giving you some reasons when he plays some moves. It's not merely memorizing stuff. However, this kind of English defense is based on b6 and d6, okay? Knight f3, bishop b4, bishop d3. This already is a move that I don't understand, honestly, bishop d3. And that's interesting. And black played bishop takes c3. And he says, this practically forces white to capture away from the center. Since white will have no d-pawn on d3 or d5, for instance, my remaining bishop should have good prospect, this remaining bishop. So d takes c3. That's interesting. But why he didn't play this? Because after all he could have played this and this, right? Boo, I don't know. This is what the author should have explained, right? So why this and not this? Who knows? Boo. d6, castle, and knight f6 is dubious, and rook e1 is dubious. Here probably why should I play e5 to free his bishop, his light square bishop. However, once more, he really didn't explain why he had to do that. But, the previous move, obviously, the capture away from the center instead of to the center. Okay, so rook e1, knight bd7, and this is, yeah, it's kind of typical probably of English defense. b4 is also dubious. Why stops me from playing knight c5? As you can see, maybe it made more sense to have this and this maneuver that I showed you before, because that would have got b5, c5 instead of b4, which was indeed on my agenda, but this cure is worse than the disease. Now white or queenside becomes a target. Yeah, of course, once you move the pawns too fast, they can become a target. Yeah, let's see. Well, how does it make it a target? Castle. Rook b1 also is marked as a dubious, and a5. That's an interesting move, yeah. Because obviously if white takes, he has 1 and 2, which means already 3 isolated pawns. So really not so good, right? Of course, white can never capture this or push past, as his remaining pawn structure, not to mention the c5 square, would become hopelessly weak. So he's consigned to waiting for me to find the best moment to open the A file. Rook b2, another dubious move, and the knight e5, which is dubious as well. And here the author writes, I was proud of this idea at the time, and the game went exactly according to plan afterwards, though I could have paid for compromising my structure. Knight takes e5, d takes e5, and bishop g5. This allows me to force a very favorable exchange. Instead, f3, okay, so instead f3 would place a firm barrier in my bishop path. So bishop g5 not so good, okay? h6, bishop takes f6. Yeah, I mean, you can see that this game is old, yeah, 1989. Why do I say that? Because today's players are formed against engines, and engines don't like to exchange bishops that way. They like to keep the bishop pair no matter what, because the bishop pair is really good. But now, I'm sorry, let's continue to see this thing that I told you. This pawn structure that he said, this forces black to, cioè white to take away from the center, it doesn't make much sense, right? So after I will watch it with a computer, because to me it doesn't make much sense that white took with the d pawn instead of the b pawn. So I'm really curious about that to understand why. And I hope you're curious too, because you see, one, I'm not a chess god, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, I want to learn watching a game, but you can only learn if you have some questions. If you don't have any questions, what are you learning, right? Okay, so he took back, queen takes f6, and rook e3. This is another dubious move, which however makes totally sense, right? Because white wants to attack But the thing is, what is he attacking? It doesn't have any kind of piece majority. This is a pawn. That's why it didn't make any sense what was done here. And with one piece, you are not going to beat this kind of structure with one piece, right? So well, let's see what he says. White wants to harass my queen, but this weakens the back rank and leaves his army badly uncoordinated. Yeah, it's badly uncoordinated. That's a fact. Rook f d8, which makes sense. Queen b1, queen g5. Here the author writes, perhaps I can play f7, f5 soon, because he wants to open the diagonal for attacking the king. Oh, the main motivation for this move was to set a nasty trap. Rook g3, queen f4, rook f3, and rook f3 is dubious as well. White's 15 move telegraph his intention, so I had predicted his last two moves and prepare a rude shock. Boom! Rook takes d3. Wow. What is he doing? That's really interesting. Okay, let's see what happens here. Okay, so rook takes d3, and it seems he's forced to take on f4. But obviously, the fourth move we see is queen takes d3, right? So, what would you do on queen takes d3? Oh, watch this. Queen c1. Wow. Queen f1. Boom. And black is up a bishop. But it is not only that thing that is up a bishop, because again, the bishop need to be activated a little more. But imagine here is everything is going down, and that thing is coming in. Let's see the next of the variation, I'm just curious. And oh wow, there is another possibility. Let's see. Okay, let's go back. So it was here, queen here, this here, and this here, I think, right? I think it was like this, yeah. So let's see, after rook takes d3, what happens if he plays this? You have to calculate this, right? Rook takes d3, yeah. Obviously there is probably this, and so you have this problem. Okay. g3, bishop takes d3, g takes f4, bishop takes b1, rook takes b1, a takes, c takes, and done. And here it says the two extra pawns should be sufficient. Yeah, definitely. And it's not only the two extra pawns. Here he has a big majority. However, white has this side with a majority, so it must also be. At this point, however, what you need to notice is that you need to know the endgame, right? If you never played endgames, you never know how to convert an advantage like this. If you play the endgames, you are more prone to understand how to actually win an endgame like this, and so it's very easy to convert. Let me pause the video and put the position back to the beginning. Okay, so we were in this position. Black played this great move, rook takes d3, and white played rook takes f4. As we have seen, however, calculation is key, because the author definitely calculated all those lines that we have seen before playing rook takes d3. Now, for the fourth line that was queen takes d3, it was easy because it was like 2 moves, but the second line that I show you, it was like 4 or 5 moves, so it was a little more difficult, okay? And then you need to have the confidence to actually pull it off. That means to win the endgame, okay? So rook takes f4, rook a d8, threatening checkmate, because takes, and is over. And here he makes a mistake, king f1. The correct move here obviously was this. And so, yeah, because at this point if you play rook d1, white is not obliged to take, and he can go back, probably. So let's see what happens, if he shows us that. Rook f1, he says e takes f4, okay. Rook e2, because obviously he can answer rook d1 to rook e1. e5, b takes b takes a, and rook e1 offers some white some chances. Full black is in great shape after bishop a6, c5, bishop c4, rook a1, rook takes c3, and now he's attacking this, queen e1, and rook c2. Okay, well, I don't know, would you like to play this kind of endgame? Maybe yes, maybe not, who knows. Let me bring the position back and see what we can do, okay? Okay, I went back a couple of moves to the diagram, because that's why diagrams are important, but unfortunately, you know, probably due to the fact that the diagrams are big, you cannot put like 2 diagrams for a page. Maybe the diagram should be made a little smaller, okay? We saw what happened after rook takes d3, rook takes f4, rook a d8, king f1 is the mistake. King f1 is the mistake. It was queen f1 to play, and here the game continues with e takes f4, and here there is king e1. Wow. Bishop takes e4, queen c1, and bishop takes g2. By clearing away the last guardian of the light square, black's bishop ensures itself an important role in the attack. Yeah, this is definitely a good idea, yeah. But now you must play this kind of endgame, right? So he played queen takes f4, which is a mistake. He says better would have been f3, but probably because it opens the rank. And bishop f3, threatening checkmate. Rook d2, rook takes d2, queen takes f3, obviously, rook d1. Oh wow! Very interesting. Tack, tack, and tack. And now we enter a pawn endgame. Wow, a pawn endgame. And this is interesting, right? Because the offer has 1 pawn advantage, if I count correctly, right? 3, 6, 7 against 2, 5, 6. But here he clearly has a pawn majority. That can be interesting, right? So once more we see that after all this battle, black was able to get a pawn advantage that must be exploited in the endgame. Okay? So what do you do now? What do you do now if you are black? He played c5, And this is the problem, right, with double pawns, that a smaller amount of pawns can keep a bigger amount of pawns at bay from creating a passer, something that goes to become a queen. And now it says the king and pawn endgame is hopeless for white. King c2, e5, king b3, e4, king f4, f5, king b5, f4. This is becoming interesting. King takes b6, a takes b4, c takes b4, e3, f takes, king takes c5, e2, e4, e1, queen, boom. But now you must stop 3 pawns, huh? a5, queen, e5, king b6, queen b8, king c5, king f7. At a certain point you need the support of a king, yes. a6, king e6. And let's see what it says. There is no way to go back in time and see what would have happened if black had not started with one b6, but it is overwhelmingly unlikely that white would have piled up inaccuracies on moves 8-15 in a normal English openings. The opportunities to go wrong are simply not there, particularly for someone with experience in the positions. Opponents of all levels play badly when deprived of their standard opening moves and plans. It is a shame to let the opening phase pass without trying to exploit this fact, particularly if you have any designs on winning. Okay, so this was definitely an interesting game. I hope you enjoyed it and that you will enjoy more games from this book. In reality, I do have another game that I would like to show you from this book.